Hey everybody, it's me, Tripl-L, and welcome to Rising of the Shield Hero, episode 13, the changes that occurred between anime and novel, because the Shield Hero anime is based on a novel. Not sure if you knew that. Yeah, like I said, we're going to be talking about the changes that occurred in episode 13 of the Shield Hero anime as compared to the original source material. It's going to be a very simple video, just pretty much informing you about some things that you otherwise really wouldn't know about. The factors that we're going to bring up in this video are going to be from small details to actually big things. But before we get into it, just some ground rules in general. There have been a few changes in the Shield Hero anime as compared to the manga and novel. Those changes that occurred in previous episodes, we won't talk about them here, just know that they occurred. I'll try to make this video as standalone as possible. Another thing to note is that there's a lot of changes that are kind of small in regards to timing, like the timing of events that you saw in episode 13. We're not going to be pointing out any of those changes, just know that the timelines are different between mediums, although they do end up in the same places. And finally, just know these are not all the changes that are present. These are just some of the changes that I thought were interesting to share with you guys. So let's just get right into it. So episode 13 pretty much starts a new arc in the anime, although it's important to note that this new arc actually started in the final chapters of the third novel. Really interesting, that'll come up later. But episode 13 starts up a plotline in regards to the Church of the Three Heroes. You see it mentioned in the episode and the bias is kind of implied, but the novel went into a little bit more detail. There is a church in Mellomark. It is the state religion that worships the three heroes and not the Shield Hero. In fact, towards the end of episode 13, you hear people calling the Shield Hero the Devil of the Shield or the Shield Devil. Enough to make you think that, okay, yeah, maybe people really don't like Naofumi and maybe that has a religious bias. But Naofumi in the novel was kind of concerned. Why didn't this come up before? So much so that Naofumi questions why didn't Armor Bro just tell him about it? To which Raphtalia answers he was probably just trying to spare Naofumi's feelings. This was important, however, because this was one of those moments where you had to wonder, why wasn't Devil of the Shield brought up earlier? Why didn't Naofumi know about this? Why didn't his allies tell us this? It was important because it pointed out that the author was aware of this particular plot thread and gave a justification as to why it didn't happen, and also gave a justification as to why Naofumi's #1 ally within the kingdom wouldn't tell him. So that's one of the first big things, and it has more to do with just justifying why this church plotline didn't pop up sooner. But the next bit is one that informs you a little bit more about Myne. Suffice to say, episode 13 shows you that things are not great with the royalty. Melty in particular has some words to explain about her sister Melty, and I'll quote her. She said, "My sister from a young age has loved bringing ruin to people. My mother has said that she would do anything to get what she wants." In the anime, you didn't really get this admission of knowing that the sister is evil. The novel gives you this. The novel is way more straightforward about making sure that the readers know that Melty knows that her sister is a danger. And so just this level of coming forth with this, it was valuable in the novel. Speaking of the novel being more straightforward, we go to something that revolves around the knights. This probably would have occurred somewhere where you had this knight tied up in terms of a timeline. The knight just pretty much came forward and say that they were totally aiming for the death of the princess. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and the reason that they were going for the death of the princess was to guarantee a certain public opinion on the Shield Hero, specifically that he was a demon. I pulled this out just because I thought that it's just good to have it straight out in the open, like this is in what they were intending. And they even told Naofumi that even if he goes to another country, he will still be followed. So they were being very antagonistic at this point. Speaking of other countries, let's talk about some skipped context about Siltveit. So in the anime, Naofumi pretty much came to his decision of going to this other country as according to looking at the border and thinking, oh, there's a lot of people trying to stop us, therefore that must be the place that we should go. In the novel, he did eventually have that as a justification, but before that, more importantly, Naofumi brought up the information about that place. Recall, Siltveit was a demi-human supremacy type country. And because of that, they most likely didn't have any relations with Mellomark, the human-dominated country. So Naofumi's thoughts were just generally, if Raphtalia was with them, they'd probably be okay, it'd be a perfect hideout, and if they took the princess Melty with them, the queen would eventually have to show up because it would be just a diplomatic disaster. Moving away from that and moving into Filo, You know, Filo can turn into an ordinary Filorial. I know, this isn't the biggest change, but I want you guys to know, for anyone that's a fan of the powers and shield hero, one of the big things about the Filorial Queen is that it hides in its flock as a regular Filorial. So it was actually cool in the novel to know that Filo actually can use this magic to turn into just a normal bird. Although Naofumi pointed out she looked very big. But you might be asking, why did Filo have to turn into a regular Filorial in the light novel? Well, that was because originally Naofumi had planned to use Filo as a distraction, since Filo was just a giant walking target. Pretty much anyone that saw her knew that was going to be the shield hero's pet. I mean, it's hard to miss her, and that's why she showed off that she could actually just masquerade as a normal one. Fun fact, she can't talk when she's in that form, so very interesting. Another fact that you really don't need, but it's interesting because it might be a running gag later. Naofumi ran into the bandits again. You know, the ones from like the second arc? Yeah, he ran into them again. And as it turns out, their boss went back to the countryside, and then that group of bandits got absorbed into a bigger group of bandits. The importance of that one was just this was the first time that Melty was involved in a fight, and this is where we found out about her powers for the first time in the novel. And continuing on that line, we actually found out about Melty's stats. We find out that she is level 18 and that she can use mid-tier water magic and could use some earth magic. And then there was a bigger talk about, it's funny that Melty has blue hair and she can use water magic, and then it was pointed out that, yeah, well, Myne has red hair and is actually really good with fire magic, as we find out later in the episode. So Naofumi made a connection that hair color seems to match magic affinity, at least with the royalty. Let's throw in another bonus detail there. Sometime around some fireside chat, Melty went and found out everyone's ages and that she's roughly the same age as Raphtalia, and then, you know, that led to Naofumi acknowledging that he is surrounded by children and therefore has a lowly, or as he said in the novel, Lolita harem. Okay, a legit fact now, did you know Naofumi actually ended up getting help from a neighboring country? Yeah, so here was the situation. While Naofumi was trying to get out of the border, while he was just skulking around, he ended up running into a merchant that knew who he was. He thought he was had at that moment, but as it turned out, the merchant was someone that Naofumi helped in the past. In that merchant's words, "You once gave us a plant seed, and because of it, prosperity has returned to our country." Now, I don't know at which point Naofumi gave one of those cursed seeds to someone, but it was most likely those refugees that we saw that one time. Anyway, point is, those guys actually came about to help him. And this moment is important because it just shows you that the shield hero has a lot of allies, a lot of places. His time helping people was worth something, and that's something that the shield hero novels tend to try and show. Now, these merchants were a bigger deal because this is actually where Filo had left her carriage behind. What happened in this situation was that the merchants had shown up, they told Naofumi they were willing to help him, and then they switched out his carriage for a cart. They hid out his carriage and then they gave him a smaller cart that he could hide in, make it less conspicuous. Jumping to another thing that the anime just skipped altogether, Naofumi also got help from soldiers. In fact, he got help from the volunteer soldier, or at least one of them, from the previous wave. Now, why was this important that this happened? Well, because the shield demon, that plotline got introduced at this point. Just the idea that the shield is a devil in this religion, which led to Naofumi introspecting that the little soldiers who volunteered to help him were actually making big moves. As Naofumi said in the novel, thinking back on it with what I know now, it must have taken enormous stores of willpower to overcome their beliefs and help me. They must have paid for it too. So this was important because it established that the soldiers that helped Naofumi really were very nice to him. And so it just adds that level of appreciation. Appreciation from the villagers, appreciation from the people who have helped Naofumi before. And thanks to him, we found out that half of the knights of the army or whatever were actually after Naofumi. Okay, now we're getting closer to the fight scenes that occurred in episode 13. So firstly, the situation with the three heroes happened very differently in the novel. For instance, they didn't just run into them in the wilderness or track them down in the wilderness. They found Naofumi hiding in a cart at a checkpoint with a wizard using detection magic. That's why I had to tell you about the cart, because you wouldn't know why Naofumi was hiding inside of a cart unless you knew that people had traded it for the carriage. Anyway, this led to a forest battle instead of a cliff battle. Okay, and now we're heading into the battle portion. Guys, things are going to get a little bit more messy here because there were a lot of differences in terms of how this had gone down between the two mediums. One of the things first to start off with, Naofumi tried to use the Iron Maiden on Motoyasu. He was really intent on taking the guy down, but luckily Ren and Itsuki stopped it and destroyed the Iron Maiden before it managed to, well, skewer Motoyasu. Another thing, I'm not sure if you noticed, but Filo didn't go crazy in episode 13 while Naofumi was using the Rage Shield, which was a difference from when Naofumi used it against Glass. And this happened because of the device that Motoyasu slapped on her. That device was able to reflect the spell that causes Filo to go into a rage when Naofumi activates the Rage Shield. Another difference, Myne actually managed to catch Melty. Okay, so this is a big difference. In the anime, Melty is never caught, but in the light novel, it did occur. And at that point, Melty was in a lot of trouble, such that she was even going to get drugged by her sister. Her sister was saying it was just going to put her to sleep, but Naofumi was pretty sure that whatever that girl was going to have her sniff was going to outright kill her. But thankfully, Filo came in there and pretty much scared Myne into letting go of Melty. But that's not the only differences revolving around Myne. In fact, you had one involving Raphtalia. See, it turns out Raphtalia actually stabbed Myne twice. The first time Raphtalia did it, it was sort of adapted in the anime, except originally it was a metal sword through the shoulder, which Myne later healed. The second time was through the chest from the front with the magic blade. So very interesting the change that they did there. Next change in this battle, there was bigger drama involving that volunteer soldier from the earlier change. Specifically, the volunteer soldier tried to get his captain to stop attacking Naofumi, and then that led into a sequence where Naofumi thought he was about to be responsible for the death of a young, nice soldier. And it was here at this instant that you had the scene of the accessory shattering. And finally, the last hand-picked big change that I spotted in the novel, Naofumi was helped away by the shadow. They didn't just run into the shadow later when they were just having a nice time. In the novel, the shadow gave Naofumi a smoke bomb, or tossed a smoke bomb into Naofumi's general vicinity. The smoke bomb gave them enough cover for them to run away. One other thing is that this shadow was not the same shadow that we saw in the anime. In fact, this actually confirmed a bit of a confusion that I had when I was watching the actual episode. There was this shadow that was following Naofumi very early on in the episode. It was this shadow that actually ended up talking with Naofumi at the end. And it largely gave Naofumi the same information that the anime counterpart did. So it was cool that the anime still had the design used somewhere, and it was still cool that we got to see the standard shadow design. So I was very happy with all of that. Anyway, this isn't all the changes. I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but there are a few. There were other things going on, like for instance in that giant fight, Ren was having a lot more struggles than was depicted in the anime. Like, he was flip-flopping very often. Raphtalia had clashes with Ren as well. There was this whole thing about the brainwashing shield that Myne brought up, and there was a bigger fight involving Motoyasu and Filo during this entire thing. And you might be wondering, why was the battle so big, so epic, so grand? Why were there so many things going on? And it's back to that point I pointed out at the beginning. This was the end of volume 3, so they needed a big set piece to finish the volume on. And when you had it in the anime, this is effectively the start of a new season for the anime. So they kind of downplayed the fight in the anime to make it flow better. But just know, it was pretty crazy originally. On a kind of related note, that also kind of explains some weirdness that we had with Filo. Did you not find it strange that Filo landed so closely to Motoyasu when the rest of the group landed so far away on that cliff? It was really interesting to watch it in the anime, and the reason that happened that way is because originally they were fighting in close quarters in a forest. So you could much easily see Filo getting caught closer to Motoyasu than whatever jump shenanigan had happened in the anime. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video. It is a lot of stuff to have to cover. So I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you like the Shield Hero content, please leave a like. Let me know that this is something that I can put my time towards. And if you like more Shield Hero content, I can guarantee you we're going to be talking about Shield Hero for at least 12 more weeks. So if you want to be on here for 12 more weeks, sign up. I'm glad to have ya. Yeah. That's pretty much it for me though. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.